Welcome back, y'all, to season 2. Yeah, that's right. I said officially, we are here at season 2 of the Cinematic Soul podcast. I'm your host, E, and let me just say, it feels good to be back. This podcast with the culture and the movies, the television shows that make our culture make me feel whole. So I'm glad to be here for season 2. Thank y'all for listening. All the new followers and listeners from the past months, thank you all for joining us on this journey and being a part of the culture, because the culture is us. And I'm glad to be back. The first feature that I want to discuss on season 2 is something that has been all over my timeline for the past 3 weeks or so. And that is the Netflix series Forever, created by the one and only Brock Akil. If you don't know who that is, you can go Google right now, pause this, and go Google Brock Akil, because that woman is phenomenal. From top to bottom, just a grade A badass. And she created Forever on Netflix, at least. And trust me, you will love it. If you won't love it, then I don't know what to tell you. But it was just phenomenal. A phenomenal piece. A love letter to youth and to blackness and to love. It's been making waves because it's an honest portrayal, in my opinion, of that black teen love and all the beautiful messiness that you and I both know comes with it. And you know, on this podcast, we love to dive into the soul of the film and the TV, especially when it hits home and it hits close to home for the culture. So with that being said, let's talk about it. Forever is a big deal. And when I say a big deal, I mean a big deal. It already got picked up for season 2. So that should tell you how much of a big deal it is and how important it is to people and to the culture and the love that people poured into this show. Because getting picked up for season 2 before season 1 like fully has been seen by the whole world, that's saying something. This is a show that centers 2 black high schoolers falling in love in Los Angeles, which, by the way, let me just say, I would love to be in Los Angeles, to have been from Los Angeles. So to see that, to hear the music, it was just phenomenal. And it's something that we rarely get to see with this level of depth and authenticity. The cultural impact is so real. Black audiences and Latino audiences love this show. And it's mainly because I feel like we're seeing our own teenage selves in every way, the good and the bad, right? You got the joy, the trauma, the questions of identity, what to say, what not to say, who to trust. That was all reflected on screen. And it was in a way that's neither a caricature or an afterthought. And that's why, even though it's not a film, I just knew I had to cover it on this podcast. This is a story that resonates across generations, and it says something about us, about family, about healing. In other words, Forever has soul. And the Cinematic Soul podcast is here for it. And we're here to talk about it. If the name Brock Akil rings a bell, that's because, hell, it should. She is a heavyweight in black television. She gave us several classics, but mainly Girlfriends, The Game, which I didn't love as much as a lot of people, but I understood it. And also Being Mary Jane. These shows that they broke ground by putting nuance to black women and their relationships front and center, which didn't happen a lot. In the early 2000s, things were starting to shift, and she was a big part in that shift. Love has always been a core theme in all of her work. For example, in Girlfriend, she explored the bonds of sisterhood and love, but in a different light. In Being Mary Jane, she navigated a successful black woman's search for love and purpose and all the good and bad that comes in that. And boy, it was a lot. A lot of ups and downs on that show, but it's good to see all of that. So it's only fitting that her first series for Netflix, which is the first, like I said, I've been told there's going to be more coming, and I can't wait to see what else she does with Netflix. But it's fitting that the first one is all about your first love. And this time it's through the eyes of two Gen Z teenagers, Justin and Keisha. And it was almost like she took that through line of black love, but pushed it into a new territory. Forever is an evolution of her vision, but also blending Judy Blume's iconic coming-of-age story with her own trademark realness. And most importantly, the part that I love, the cultural specificity was shining through and through. Quick backstory on Forever. Like I said, it was based, but when I say based, I say loosely based because it's not exactly the same. So don't go into the Judy Blume novel thinking you're going to see the story of Justin and Keisha. No, it's loosely based on the 1975 novel of the same name. Mara says she grew up reading the book and she identified with Judy Blume's books in general and the characters and was just drawn to that raw honesty in them. So when she adapted Forever for a modern audience, it was basically doing what she's always done. Like she's telling our truths on screen, but now for a younger generation who doesn't get that, who doesn't get these stories told with that kind of love and with that kind of purpose, the intention. She didn't just remake it, she remixed it to include at the forefront Black identity, to talk about mental health. And we all know in the Black community, we need to talk about that more because it's often overlooked, but it is necessary. But what was also cool, something that for most of us who were older, or when social media came out, we were already, at different points in life, and it wasn't like it is now. They put the social media age into the conversation with the stories. And first of all, let me say, I couldn't imagine being a teenager like after 2015 when Instagram was getting heavy and the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Snapchats, all that stuff. I couldn't imagine being 13, 14, 15, 16 with that, being in high school, and kids are already cruel. So to know that these platforms hold so much weight in the opinions at a certain point and in a certain way, I get why Keisha felt how she felt, but at the same time, maybe I would have handled it a little differently. But I understand. Most definitely. One thing I loved as well was some of the episodes were directed by not only Black directors, but one in particular, the incredible Regina King, who has gone through a lot, but I'm happy that she's back and she's working more behind the scenes now, giving the show that cinematic flair and putting her vision behind it as well. Like, just talk about Black girl magic. She is that, but now we get to see that version of her from a behind the scenes POV. Mara has a signature style. It's that authentic dialogue, nuanced characters, but they also have a mixture of humor when necessary. It's not all heavy. But with the humor, you also see the heart. And that was all over Forever. From the first episode to the last episode, you could see all of those things. If you loved how Girlfriends made you laugh, while also reflecting on the real life issues and the drama and the I hate you too type of shit that we all do, you'll appreciate what she did here. Only now, as I said before, she's channeling that into a tender teenage romance, which is even more complicated, right? And with that, you have all the parental dynamics around it, the mom and dad, this and that, the brother, sister, the social media. And it just feels like that natural next step for Mara, in my opinion. She gave us black women in their late 20s and 40s, so why not give us black girls and black boys at 16 and 17, but in this day and age, so we can kind of understand them more, myself included sometimes. We turn our noses up at the kids and say, oh man, these kids just don't get it, or this and that, without sometimes trying to see things from their point of view. We're just like, no, the way we did it was right. I'm not listening to y'all, you listen to me. And I love how this showed all the behind the scenes, like kind of what the kids are going through and why it's important to talk to them and not try to just teach every time, but also just listen, to take that time to make sure they know, I hear you, I want to understand you, and how can we get there? That's the most important part to me. And when that happens, we're all better for it. Don't you agree? So let's set the stage. Forever, as I said previously, is set in sunny Southern California, and it just looks so beautiful. Every scene, I was just like, California just has that glow that I wish I could experience on a day-to-day basis, man. I'm gonna keep saying it until it happens, but just gorgeous shots. And it follows two high school seniors, Keisha Clark and Justin Edwards, who knew each other as kids, but didn't really keep growing up together. They didn't stay connected. So they were in the same kindergarten class, if I'm not mistaken, and hadn't seen each other since around 6 or 7 years old. So obviously, with that time passing, people change, right? Like, I would hope you're not the same at 6 years old as you are when you're 17. You're not going to be that different, but hopefully there's some kind of growth and personality that's different in you. And that's what happened with Justin and Keisha. They were there at this New Year's Eve party, and he saw her but didn't know who she was. He just saw her as this gorgeous black girl who was like, damn, I want to talk to her. But she knew him from the jump. And that's so funny because that kind of thing happens to me a lot. And sometimes I feel bad where people know me and I'm just not putting it together. And that's funny because I can remember things from when I was like 4 or 5 years old. But some people I just do not remember. And they remember what I used to wear, the shoes I liked back when I was 10 years old. And I feel terrible because I don't have that same remembrance for them. So if you know this is me and you, or this happened to us, whether it's a teacher or a classmate, I am so sorry. Don't take it personal. But yeah, it be like that sometimes, but not for Keisha. She remembered Justin. She clocked it immediately. And from the jump, you could see their chemistry. It was electric and vibrant. Keisha and Justin were both athletes in their own right. Now, Keisha was a track star, like on the up and up. And Justin was a basketball player who had the skill, but he wasn't really given that outlet to shine as a starter. So he was riding the bench until they actually got together. And he broke out in that scene, which we all know and love. Justin was riding the bench, but still athletes in their own right. And they're these teenagers coming of age in a world that expects excellence from them at every turn. And at 16, 17, that's a lot of weight to hold on your shoulders, whether you're a boy or a girl. Keisha Clark she's that girl who seems to have it all together. You know, she's confident, she's smart, very fiery, and a straight A student with a clear dream of attending Howard University on an athletic scholarship, which I'm not mad at that. You going to this HBCU paid for. So if you can get that scholarship, go get that. Go handle your business. And she lives with her mom in this modest apartment. Her mom is a hardworking woman who's doing what she can for the family. And Keisha is carrying the hopes and dreams of her mom and her family in so many ways, which I think is hard for some people to deal with. But she was trying her best. Keisha is determined to be the first to go to college, the first to grab that feeling of achievement of walking across that stage and saying, I did it. That's a big deal for a lot of people, especially in the Black community, where you have the families who didn't quite go to that level. They did what they could and they did what they had to do. They sacrificed, like her mom Shelly did, but they didn't get to cross that stage. So you are holding that weight on your shoulders. And she was determined to make that happen. As I said, her mom sacrificed. She's working 2 jobs, working the night shift and the morning shift to get Keisha into these private schools and pay that tuition, which is expensive, as we know. I can only imagine how much it costs in Southern California. So shout out to her for trying to make a way out of a way and keep grinding for your daughter, because that's what we have to do as parents. But beneath that drive, Keisha was also a teenage girl dealing with trauma and trying to discover how to heal from that trauma, which does take time, and it took her time. We learned early on that she went through a deeply violating incident. Teenagers being stupid, being young and dumb, but this does happen, and it shouldn't happen, with her boyfriend, Christian. Now, this peanut head ass boy, I did not like that character, y'all. I'm so sorry. No shade to the actor. I'm sure you're a fine young man. But the Christian character, I did not like that little nigga. Like, Christian Boykin, right? That was his name. He secretly recorded him and her having an intimate moment. Now, Keisha was fine having the moment, but she wasn't fine with him sharing it without her consent. And that caused the video to go viral because, like I said, they're in the social media age. The video goes viral and everybody knows about it. Everybody has it. Everybody's saving it to their phones and sending it to teachers at the schools and just a bunch of fucking mess. I'm not gonna lie. That part, the look on her face whenever it was like brought up, that hurt to watch. That was painful for me because I have sisters, as some of you know. And I couldn't imagine that happening to my sisters and how that would make them feel, them trying to feel like they have to navigate that on their own at 16, 17 years old. That's too much for anybody. So my heart hurt for her in that moment. And it fractured her sense of safety and identity, as you'd expect. It was an emotional wound that she tried to grapple throughout the series, and it took her a while to get where she needed to be. But at first, it was just, man, that was heavy. So when Keisha met Justin, she wasn't coming to him fresh and unscarred. She was coming with baggage of her own, no fault of her own. But there was some baggage there. There was the trust issues, the hurt, and the need to reclaim her narrative. And then we have Justin Edwards. Justin, on the other hand, he was a bit of a paradox. Like he was a nerd at heart, disguised in the athletic basketball player body. And those two things, sometimes people don't allow them to mix, even though they should and can mix. People like to have them separate. And from the outside, he might look like the typical basketball jock, but Justin was just this thoughtful, slightly awkward kid who I believe was dealing with ADHD and just the immense amount of pressure from his family, but mainly from his mom. That family in that house, they were well off. They were a well-off Black family. And the upscale Windsor Hills neighborhood, and I've never been there before, but from the looks of it, just a gorgeous neighborhood. So we're talking black wealth on display. Nice ass house, successful parents. Dad is a chef in his own right, and mom is just school, big businesswoman personified. So you have them as your parents. They're at the forefront. Justin's mom, Dawn, this is important. She was a Northwestern alum, and she fully expected him to follow in her footsteps to be at that school, to that PWI. If you don't know what that means, predominantly white institution. And she wanted that for Justin's college. She had his life. Yes, I said she had his life mapped out. Here's the plan. You go get the grades. You keep up the extracurriculars because some of them are important to have on the resume. You snag that legacy admission because she also went there. And meanwhile, Justin did dream of playing Division I basketball, but at the same time, he felt kind of lost. And he was lost about what he truly wanted beyond what was expected of him. And that's a tough place to be in, especially as a teenager. There was a line in the show where Justin was called lost because he didn't know what his path was yet. But honestly, I feel like that's not a bad place. To be 17 and to be expected to know how your whole life is going to be planned out. Why? Why can't I keep growing and learning as I go? I'm not saying just sit at home and do nothing all day. But why can't I learn as I'm moving? Why can't I make these changes to my future and to my life as I'm going? I'm only 17 years old. I feel like that's a weight that's unnecessary. And so many of our kids struggle with that, and they end up falling along the wayside because the plan doesn't go accordingly. So they feel like failures. That's not true. That should not be true. And Justin was under all this stress to be excellent. Yet he hadn't figured out if those dreams were his or his mom's. When Keisha and Justin's world collided, it was fireworks and challenges. They were deeply in love, and it was cute. You know, we got all these first love butterflies and the songs in the background, which, by the way, soundtrack, phenomenal. We'll discuss that later. Awkward first date things and the first kiss sneaking around and that intense feeling of, I have never felt this way before in my life. What is this feeling? Do I like it? This is scary. My heart's going to fall out of my chest, right? That's what it felt like. It was all those vibes. And they also hit some bumps along the way. Like that viral video, for example. It created a huge rift in trust. And Justin had to come to terms with Keisha's past and the hurt that she was carrying all by herself from that past. And Keisha had to learn, which is important here, to let someone in again after being betrayed and how to not make this person be that person and to keep secrets, because sometimes those secrets can become a boulder of weight that neither of you can hold. So sometimes you gotta let it out. Even though it's hard to have tough conversations, they are very necessary, especially in dating somebody. Plus, both of them are juggling these college applications and sports and families who sometimes feel like second antagonists in their love story. It's about the context around them. Keisha and Justin's relationship never unfolded in a bad way for the entire episode. There were scenes where it's just like, oh shit, y'all, come on. But they always seemed to find their way back to each other. It was messy. It was, I'm gonna block you. Okay, no, I love you. I'm gonna block you too, though. Like, just crazy mess. But at the same time, that was real. I've talked to a couple people who are a bit younger than me, who were in their 20s, who were like around when the Snapchats and things started becoming big, and they were like, that's real. I would like somebody one day, then block them next week, and then unblock them. It was a real thing. But as somebody who, like I said, was older around that time, I was just like, this is so stupid. Just talk to the boy. Just talk to the girl. I'ma block you, and that's it. Like, come on, y'all. But I'm glad they showed that, because it's important for us who didn't go through that to see. This typical teenage stuff, but it's layered differently with our Black cultural experience in a way that feels fresh and hip. One thing I do appreciate is how the writing treats them as teenagers with a lot of respect. They're not just dumb caricatures, right? They make dumb decisions, but who doesn't? As I said before, blocking your boo because of some minor issue, right? That's petty, but we've all been petty in our own ways. But they're also emotionally intelligent in other moments. We see them grow individually and as a couple. We see them grow together. By the end of the season, both Keisha and Justin have decided, you know what? This is what I want. This is what I see my future looking like, with or without you. And that journey, that last episode had your boy in his feelings. I'm not even gonna hold you. It had me kind of sniffling at the, had to get some tissue, man. But before I jump to the end, let's talk about some of the key characters and the people who helped shape Keisha and Justin's story, because they are important, and that's their parents. Forever might center on first love, but it's also very much about family and the family dynamic where it's a love-hate, it's a push-pull kind of thing. In fact, I feel like a lot of the show's soul, that thing we love here, right? That comes from the interplay between these teens and their moms and dads. So let's talk about that for a second. So first we have Shelly and Dawn. These two mothers with generational differences and the mental health aspect. We have to talk about that. So we have Shelly Clark. Shelly Clark is Keisha's mom. And she was played by an actress who I'm starting to see more, and I appreciate her growth. I saw her first like cutting hair in movies and being a character with no lines to actually having an impact on the story. She was someone who you could feel the weight that she was carrying, if we're being honest. As a single Black mother, she was working those long hours, and I think she was like a nurse's aide or something similar to that aspect. And the show hinted that she was juggling jobs to make ends meet after Keisha's scholarship fell through. And I can only imagine what that felt like, and to feel like you have to keep going by yourself with no help or little help. Moms need a therapist too, which she eventually got. It was very much shaped in a generational context, because she reminded me of a lot of our moms and aunties who, if you know, you know, they're resilient, no nonsense. I'm not coddling you. You know, she had that kind of energy where I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna love you hard in the face, but I'll also whoop your ass if you step out of line, because I ain't got time for the BS. That's real. And that's how a lot of our women in the family are. And I love them. For part of the show, Shelly was pretty strict. Didn't really talk about the necessary issues and how to overcome them. It was a go to work, go to school, hold it down. Feelings come later, right? This is about making it all happen right now. But as the story progressed, we saw moments where she became vulnerable and emotional. That openness that her and Keisha grew to have with each other was just, it was beautiful, man. There was one scene where Keisha had a falling out I won't spoil it too much. Keisha was distraught, and Shelly found her in the room, curled up, and instead of scolding her and giving her that "I'm disappointed in you" speech, she just softened up. She sat with Keisha, she let her cry, and then she shared her own pain from the past and things that she went through. Something that, up until that point, she had never done before with Keisha. So you could see her growth. With that, you realize Shelly's toughness because she went through her own shit. She had Keisha early on in life, and her life changed, and she had to keep it moving and keep making it work for her baby, for her child. That mother-daughter bond, especially between Black moms and daughters, can be complicated because, boy, I've seen it firsthand with people. Shelly isn't perfect, right? She's figuring out how to raise this young Black girl in a world that's already hurt her baby, and she couldn't help prevent it. She couldn't stop that hurt from happening. So just imagine how she feels knowing that happened to Keisha, and there was nothing she could do and did do at the time because she had no idea about it. She didn't know. How could she have? And that became a source of guilt and learning for her. By the end, she became more than just the stern mom. She becomes Keisha's confidant and her ally in that healing journey that they both go on together because they both did need to heal. I love how this show handled Black girls and the emotional wealth and help that's necessary throughout Keisha and her mom's relationship. It was one of the strongest aspects of the show, in my opinion. Aside from the her and Justin stuff, I think that part of it was so important and so inspirational. It talks about the importance of breaking that cycle of silence about trauma that we often hear about and go through as Black people, my Black women. You don't have to suffer by yourself. It's okay to not be okay. And I love that Shelly learned that and Keisha learned that. And that's something that a lot of our moms struggle to verbalize and still, in my opinion, struggle to say, to talk about, you know? On the other side of that, we have Dawn, who is Justin's mom. Dawn Edwards, played by Karen Pittman, who, shout out to Karen Pittman, by the way. Now, Dawn is what you would call a helicopter mom, for sure. Hovering over Justin's every single move. And she is this book-smart, college-educated woman who has a high-powered career, and she loves her children to death. Justin especially, right? And Dawn is constantly on Justin about his every move, his grades, his behavior, basketball, his future, everything. You know, she was the type to color code a college application checklist and email his basketball coach with tips. That's the kind of vibe Dawn was giving. And at first I was like, Auntie, chill. Let that boy just you breathe. Like, everybody calm down. But as the show goes on, you start to understand why she was like that and where the hypervigilance came from. And it was ultimately a place of fear and deep love for her son. She knows about Black boy joy and she wants Justin to be great. But she also knows that as a Black boy, Justin won't get many second chances, even with the help from her and his father. Black men don't get that many chances to make a mistake, to fuck up. You cannot in this society. So from that point of view, I get why she was that way to a certain extent. She admitted at one point that she was hard on him because she was terrified of what might happen if, and that's a big if he slips up. And that adds more context, and it made me see her in a more sympathetic light. The writers did a great job, in my opinion, of just giving Dawn these layers. she wasn't just like a Tiger Mom caricature. She let her feelings show, sometimes too much, but she also showed her softness that peeked through that tough exterior. Sometimes she pushed Justin too hard. Sometimes she let him have fun. There was a balance, even though sometimes the bad part was just like, my God, girl. But she did great things for him too.
Now I gotta pause right there and speak from the heart for a second, because that moment where Justin got the keys to his brand new car and he was excited, as he should be. Damn it, Justin, you earned it. But that moment was real because he went out and at one point he got followed by a cop car. And the fear in his eyes, the shift in the music when that car got behind him, that felt so real to me. And I had to watch that scene about 4 or 5 times because I was just like, damn, we have to go through and have gone through some shit that you would not believe. I saw myself in that moment. And let me talk about that real quick. So, I've had a few run ins with the police over the years, whether it was on foot, because of somebody else, getting pulled out of a car, stopped on the side of the road. It doesn't matter, right? I've been there several times. But there's one night that'll never leave me. And no matter how hard I try, it's always on my brain at some point and in some place. 2016. I was living in an apartment that was about maybe a mile and a half from my job. And I didn't have a car at that time. So I would just walk to and from work about 2 or 3 days a week just so I can save money. And that day, I worked a double. I worked from 9 to 3, and then I was off for an hour, took a break, and I worked from 4 to 9:30. And I got off, it's about 10ish p.m. or so, and I'm walking home. Now, the road I had to walk on was a very dark road. Um, it was it was like a straight shot from the job to my apartment, but it was pitch black, especially at nighttime. There were no street lights, no cameras, no nothing, no restaurants, just darkness. So I'm walking like I usually do. I have my headphones on, just vibing out, singing some R&B 90s songs, right? And a cop car is behind me. And I see it because I don't have it too loud to where I can't hear what's going on, because obviously that wouldn't be smart. So I hear the car pulling up, but I don't think they're going to stop, right? I just keep walking, minding my business, but I'm singing a little bit lower now, being mindful of who's around me. And the car stopped right next to me. And the guy in the passenger side asked where I was going. And I wasn't rude. I wasn't loud. I wasn't mean. I was just honest. I told him I was walking home from work. At the time, I had a Starbucks shirt that had the name on the side of the arm. So you can see the name of my job on my arm and the arm that was pointed towards them. I'm like, I'm walking home from work. I have an apron string sticking out of my bag. We wore the green aprons. So I thought that would speak for itself. But apparently, they didn't like how I spoke to them and how I spoke with such confidence. They didn't like that I didn't shrink myself or act scared in the moment, even though on the inside, I was scared shitless. One of them stepped out and he said, "Oh, you think you know everything, huh, boy?" And when he said that, in my mind, I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. I didn't think to call anybody or make any sudden movements because this was 2016. So if I reach for anything on this street with no lights and no cameras, that could be all she wrote for me. So I didn't pull my phone out. I just stood there. And when he said that, I'm quiet. I'm making sure they see I'm making eye contact, but I'm not trying to be intimidating. I'm not trying to run. I'm just standing there, my hands out so they can see him. And then the other officer got out and he stood behind me. So now I'm boxed in, one in front, one in the back of me. And the one in the back shoved me to the ground, knee in my back. The other officer is laughing. And he leaned over and he said, "How do you feel now, huh, tough guy? Keep talking that shit. Come on, I can't hear you anymore." And I'm just sitting there on the ground, not trying to fight back. I'm not running. I'm not cursing at them. I'm just lying there. And then I started to pray, loud enough to where they could hear me, but not to make a scene. I started to pray. And the one officer who was behind me with his knee in my back said, "Oh God, you're one of those, huh? Here we go." So apparently this isn't your first stop, right? This isn't the first time you've done this to a person. And that night on that road, there were no witnesses. There was no one else around, no footage, just me and them. They didn't even have on body cams back then yet, so there was nothing to prove what happened except my word and theirs. After a few minutes of that on the ground and me starting to cry, they let me go. And they just laughed and got back in their car and drove off like it was nothing, like it was a joke. But that wasn't a joke to me, and it would never be. So I walked the rest of the way home, about half a mile to go, with a dirty footprint on my back and my knees scraped up from being pushed on the ground. In silence. No music now because I don't feel like it. My night is ruined. My week is ruined. Hell, my year was ruined. And the fact that if they wanted to, my name could have been added to that long list. The one we know all too well. Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, all of these people had their lives taken with no thought about it. I think about that night more than I would like to admit, if I'm being honest. Thank God for therapy. And the hardest part is, as I said before, no one would have known if I hadn't talked about it. There'd be no footage, there'd be no protests, it'd be just silent. And that's why Justin's fear in that one scene hit me like a gut punch. It hit me harder than Mike Tyson could. Because that fear lives inside so many of us, whether we're in the car, walking on the sidewalk, or just trying to get home from a long shift at wherever job you work at. We carry that fear not because we want to, but because we have to. Because shit is real. History has taught us that safety is not guaranteed. That doing everything right and just being a good sport still might not be enough. So, miss me with all of that, just say the right things bullshit. In that moment, it did not matter. So when you watch that scene, just know that they're not being dramatic. It's not exaggerated. That's a real fear for Justin, for me, and for countless others. And it's time that we make sure that for the future generations, that fear not be normalized. It's time for it to end. Something has to change.
And one thing that I did like was when she reached out to Keisha because she wanted to make sure Keisha was good for her son. And she also wanted Keisha to tell her mom what happened because she felt like that was important. That was a twist that I appreciated because sometimes you need that stern person to say, hey, if you don't tell them, I'm going to tell them. And from there, that's when the truth comes out because you're afraid of how they're going to say it. So ultimately, you say what you need to. And Keisha's story needed to be told. especially to her mom. So kudos to Dawn for that. I love how the show doesn't villainize Dawn for her approach, but it does show the friction it causes. For example, Justin's ADHD. We discover that he does have ADHD, but Dawn at first came at it like, okay, how do we fix this so it doesn't mess with your success? How do we make this problem not a problem? Whereas his dad and Keisha were more like, okay, how do we understand it? How do we get to know what your feelings are about it, Justin? And how can we help you be your best while acknowledging that that's something that happens and that's a part of you that is there and it is important to acknowledge. By the end, Dawn has to confront that her fear might actually be hurting Justin in reality right now. And she attempted to kind of loosen that grip just a little bit. And that is a realistic portrayal of a mom, a black mom, learning how to trust her son on making his own choices. Because as a young man, that's an important step of him becoming a man himself. And let me tell you, seeing Dawn evolve, that hit home in so many ways. We all have the cousins, the aunts, the parents, the uncles who had to learn how to show us love, but in a gentler way, because sometimes being rough and rugged doesn't always work, but that's how they were taught. We had Shelly and Dawn bring up the topic of mental health in different ways. With Shelly and Keisha, for example, it was about the emotional healing and breaking that strong black woman trope about not being vulnerable, just keeping it all to yourself and being strong and holding your head high. Holding your head high is important, but also you have to realize that it's okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to need people sometimes. We're all humans. With Dawn and Justin, it was about acknowledging things like ADHD and anxiety and how they can affect how you process things on a daily basis rather than brushing to the side under the rug and just saying, oh, you're fine. Forget that. We're still doing it this way. We can do things, but we have to make sure we allow those truths to be acknowledged and cared about. They handle those themes, in my opinion, with care, and it normalizes a big thing for me, which is therapy. Therapy, 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 y'all. Therapy and honesty and honest conversations in a black family context. That's what I loved the most about this. There was a scene where Justin finally tells his parents just how lost and pressured he felt about going to Northwestern and doing things his mom's way. That wasn't what he wanted. And that was hard for him to say to them, but he had to say it, or else it might be too late. Dawn was slightly angry, but I feel like her reaction mostly was concern and a bit of, let's say, regret. In a way, she was a mom who realized, all right, I need to support my son's mental well-being, not just his achievements, while also making sure he is successful in his own way. I wanted to be with something that he loves and not what I want for him. And that was big. It was subtle, but it was big. I love how mental and emotional health was a topic that was important, and they show how it's important for black youth, and it's just a breath of fresh air, man. Forever didn't shy away from showing what it means to be young and black in spaces that often don't nurture that side of you. Instead, it gives you a blatant honesty and a look at the toll and the triumph of all that goes in that. So I applaud the creators for weaving those discussions in without making it feel preachy or churchy. It was just a natural part of the story's fabric. Now I gotta talk about my favorite character in this whole series, and that was Eric Edwards, played by the legendary Wood Harris. And it just brings a breezy, charismatic energy to the whole role. He's that kind of black dad and dad in general, right? Who we don't see enough on screen, in books. He's that guy who was emotionally present, but also wise and utterly devoted to his family, his wife and kids, but not in a helicopter kind of way. If Don was the accelerator, let's call Eric the brake in the best way. He balanced Don's high strung approach with his own laid back, hey man, that understanding vibe that is so important in parenthood and just growing as a person in general. From the first episode, you could tell he gets his son at least more than any of the other characters do. He's the one he can talk to about feeling overwhelmed and also giving him advice about sex and things like that, which are also important, without making him feel overwhelmed, and cracking jokes here and there to lighten it up, because sometimes it can be tense. So those dad jokes are very helpful and very important, and he showed that, in my opinion, perfectly. He gave Justin room to be imperfect, which is such a gift in the household. Eric listens to Justin's music. He encouraged him to pursue what makes him happy. And he's also not afraid to check Dawn in a loving way when she was doing a lot. Because it happened several times where Dawn was just on 10. Eric like, yo, chill. Good cop mode for sure came in several scenes, and that's needed. That's needed. Because without that, I feel like Justin and the other son might have suffocated with just Dawn. Even though Dawn loved them, she was a lot. And one of my favorite moments with Eric and Justin, he told Justin a story about how he had his own missteps. Right? He's this great chef now with like 6 restaurants. But at Justin's age, he said not knowing your entire future at 18 is okay. As I said before, you still have room to grow as long as there's something and there's a passion about something that's driving you. Then go to that. But you're still young. He's that TV dad who reminded you of an uncle or that older brother of a friend of yours who was always there to offer a word of wisdom and a pat on the back. He didn't let you go crazy and be stupid, but he also gave you room to breathe, room to grow as you need, especially as a young black man. Black Twitter and Black Threads love that character, and I love that character was shown because, as I said, he was the real MVP in my opinion. Give that man Father of the Year award for how he handled every single scene, every piece of trauma, every joke. Give him all the awards, man. Shout out to Wood Harris for that, because he made that character come to life in a way that was necessary in this dramatic love story. He was needed. Now, contrasting, let's talk about Keisha's father, who was, for the most part, absent. Keisha grew up without her dad around, and it was implied that he left when she was young, right? Doing his own thing, trying to make his own way, but not caring about his responsibilities at home because his personal life wasn't what he wanted. So he left them to hang, and he left a void there. You can kind of see that in how Keisha initially struggled to, even though she liked Justin, she didn't fully trust him because of the Christian thing and her dad not being around. Sometimes when that parent is missing, you cling extra hard to the one you have, and you want to please them so much to the sacrifice of your own life and your own mental health. And that showed in Keisha in so many ways. She was smart, but that absence of her dad and the trauma of that video being leaked, it was always like in the background of her psyche. It was always in her head. She didn't talk about her dad much in the first few episodes, but when other characters mentioned their dad, when she looked at Justin's dad, You could see that flicker in her eyes. Now, later on in the show, Keisha's dad is there, right? He appears around her graduation time, and he's the happy dad. That's my baby. Come here, girl. Just loud and proud, right? But you could see that him being back, even briefly, it brought a storm of emotions. There was the pain, there was anger, but there was also, as I said before, and as I've seen with my own family, that undeniable longing for him, for that bond, for that relationship. And you get a sense that Keisha, who's been carrying this question of why wasn't I enough for him to stick around, that several girls have, especially black girls who don't have present fathers. Why wasn't I enough? Why not me? And it's not a fairy tale reconciliation, right, by any means. And I think that's what made it real. You could tell he loved her, she loved him, but at the same time, we still gotta fix some shit, dog. It's still not where it needs to be yet. And that's honest. You can see Keisha soaking in the energy of having her dad around, even though it's brief. But at the same time, it's a reminder that, present or absent, fathers have a profound impact on their children's lives, not only in this show, but in real life. One thing I loved about Forever is how they made a point to center black people in spaces of wealth, not just the struggle or the trying to get by day-to-day life, which does happen. That's a real thing as well. But also, some black people are well off. Some black folks go to Martha's Vineyard every summer and have these lavish houses. For some people, that is their real life experience, not just the struggle and the pain of being from the hood and this and that. We also have wealth, and we also have these great jobs and, restaurants that are in different cities and just thriving. We're all of that, and then some. It's not that the issues of class don't exist, but they're not the focus here. It's just black people in every aspect, being and thriving and living just as they are. Black family living in an upscale community, and the drama that comes from that is a great thing to see and portray on screen. It felt more true in some ways of life because often, like I said, we see the black stories where they revolve around struggling or the clash for cash or joining the gang to make ends meet to get some money on the side. And with Forever, it's like, yeah, there's struggle, but there's different kinds of black struggle. There's the mental health aspect and the identity issues, or the interpersonal stuff like the family expectation, which is a big part, rather than some 24/7, 9 to 5 grinding type of struggle that we often see. This was different. This was a different form of progress in representation, which I appreciate. I'm going to keep saying it because it was great to see that big ass house and the pool and the prep schools, and that's a real thing. That is life for some black people. Also, seeing Justin's family success is uplifting in a way, because Dawn and Eric are this power couple who became powerful in different ways in their own right. They don't do the same thing, but they made it work and they thrive together. They're a force together. It's like an updated version of Cliff and Claire in their own way, minus the sweaters, And then there's the contrast of Keisha's family, but in a non-judgmental way. Both families are doing their best. They're just doing what they can, how they can, and they use their resources in different ways. This show to me isn't about some rich boy, poor girl drama and some, fake stuff like that. I think it's about the shared realities of these characters and the things they face in their own worlds, separately and together. And you see the uniqueness in that, in their backgrounds and what they bring. The normalizing of black wealth lets me as a viewer know that sometimes it's okay to just enjoy the aspirational aspects. For example, the gorgeous shots of Justin's house and the Martha's Vineyard tracks and the house that stayed in there, just gorgeous lake views. And you can take all that in without the moral lecture attached to it. That's not needed. We don't need to say, well, if you put yourself together, when you get it out the mud and grinding, just show me them living and thriving. I appreciated that. We deserve that kind of representation too. And in Forever, I feel like wealth was part of the setting, but not the story's soul. The soul, in my opinion, lies in how everybody dealt with the pressures and expectations that come with their status. It's a nuanced take, and I appreciate the visual. I appreciate the story. And speaking of that, now here we call this podcast the Cinematic Soul, and being a cinematic podcast, we gotta talk about the visual artistry of Forever, which was my favorite part. All the drama was cool, but let me tell you, they shot this so beautifully. The cinematography and the direction is what just showed the most to me. That's what caught my eye more than anything else. The camera angles, the lighting, that had me sinking into my seat, just in awe of the gorgeousness, of the beauty. This show had a warm, intimate visual style that I think perfectly complemented the story. Like, they used the Los Angeles natural light, which is that golden California sunset type feel, that soft glow, and it just caressed their black skin. And I gotta say, that's one thing that when black people film black people and shoot black people on screen, you can see the care and the attention to detail and how that skin pops, how that melanin shines. We need more of that. Please keep giving us that. Each frame felt like it was just rich, and they had sun-kissed skin, man. It was like, it gave me a bit of an Insecure vibe, and not just because it was in California as well, but in terms of lighting. Like, you know how Issa Rae, for example, she showed LA, and even though it was funny and it was dramatic, she made it look like dreamy. And it felt like a place you wanted to be, with the music and the camera angles and the smiles in the background, the extras, all these gorgeous brown and black people. It felt like a dream. It made black people look radiant, as we are, as we damn well should be. And Forever just achieved that for me, but in its own way. I feel like the cinematographers knew very clearly what to expect and what we expected, and how to light darker skin tones to perfection. Whether you got the outdoor track meet under the bright sun, or a dimly lit house party, or the basketball scene, it was all intentional, right? We see the full range of tones in their skin, and that warmth, that glow. None of that ashy, underexposed, we don't really care about these niggas type of filming. We got our blackness in all of our glory. In the emotional scenes, for example, they got the intimate close-ups between Justin and Keisha, the eye contact. Baby, that eye contact was, you could cut the tension with the knife. Like, I was like, oh my God, man. And I just feel like they moved at a very deliberate pace. It was like, let's do a shot breath. Let's do a silent stretch. Let's make the actors' expressions tell the story by themselves. So we see that in a scene where, let's say, Justin and Keisha lie on the hood of his car, right? They're stargazing. And in that scene, the camera just rested. It was like a wide shot, right? It was a wide shot against the night sky. And I'm just thinking back to it now. They took that extra beat. No rush, just letting the tenderness sink in. That kind of thing drives me wild. Like, I love that so much. But I have to talk about, for example, on a cinematography note, the final episode in particular. That final episode was like, I know I sound so corny right now, but y'all, it was so beautiful. It was like a visual feast, if you will. And it was loaded with symbolism and expression and importance, emotions. We got the glitzy, sparkling lights, everybody dressed up in bold colors, and the camera swirling around as if it's saying, this is the climax. And then we get Justin and Keisha, going to this quiet ramen shop that they love. And this is the goodbye scene. But the color scheme there was just, it was gentle. And it was like a dim lighting, but it was a warm dim lighting. And they had the soft, neutral tones. And you feel like you just exhale after all the high stimulation of the parties and the prom and all that bright lights and loud music shit. It's just, this was an exhale after all that. And I love that contrast. It was like the show guided us from the heights of a teenage celebration to the grounded reality of two people in a corner sharing that truth, talking about their futures and growing up. And we got to give props to the production design as well. Like the settings where they showed the background characters and the angles to show certain pieces of architecture was just very well thought out and very well done. Like Keisha's bedroom, for example, it was giving me like Moesha bedroom vibes and like a DIY photo collage wallpaper, hundreds of photos, and you could tell she loved her room and that was her space. That was her corner, her castle. And in every episode, you could see, if you're like me, that collage behind her was growing as she printed out new pictures and new things with Justin. That wall kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was a cool representation visually of her world and how she's processing it and how her world is growing in itself. And then you have Justin's world by contrast and how it was slightly sterile and it was immaculate. It was an immaculate vibe at first. It was full of Northwestern banners and trophies and colors in his own way and a hell of a lot more space, obviously. But then you see he got his DJ stuff in the corner and his laptop, his beat machines, and it's showing his hidden passion for music that was always there, but slowly that space got bigger and his space got a little messier as Justin started to assert himself. And that is what I call visual storytelling. The intimate close-ups, the rich lighting, the warm tone cinematography capturing the glow of Justin and Keisha together and the smiles, the hairstyles, just the blackness, man. That stole the show for me. And I appreciate that because it's so true. Every single frame, every single angle, every single song told part of the story. And speaking of songs, by the way, we cannot talk about Forever without, like me, just gushing about the music and the soundtrack. The choices, baby, the choices were fire, man. It was like a character in its own right. Brock Akil, you think about her work, how she weaves in music into her stories. Like Girlfriends had that neo soul early 2000s flavor, and then the Being Mary Jane had the contemporary slow jams and the R&B single woman bops, or the I'm kind of going through it, you know. But Forever, I feel like might be the most music infused project that she had so far. Now, the series itself is set in 2018, which was 7 years ago now. That sounds crazy because 7 years is a long time, but that was a great year for music. 2017, 2018, and it was like a time capsule of that era. Like the black music scene in LA, for example. It was heavy on the SZA, the Frank Ocean, Tyler the Creator, Anderson .Paak, Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace Nip, her, Daniel Caesar. It was a certain kind of mood and a certain vibe. And every episode was packed with songs that didn't just play in the background, they elevated the scene emotionally. They told the story from a different angle and a different lens. The song selection, it hit all the right notes of nostalgia and mood at the right time, because if you were a teen, let's say in 2017, 2018, or if you were like a young adult, then you know the vibe that they were trying to set. And these songs, still listening to it now, transport me to that time period with the SZA Control album and the Nipsey and it was just heavy on the LA California influence. And you can see it. The music supervisor said that he wanted to have that magic touch, that LA authentic flavor. And you can hear it. There were some sequences where they stand out because the song choices were very intentional and they made sense. Like Justin and Keisha, I feel like shared music as a way of talking, and they also did that with the background songs, like the prom scene, for example. That prom scene where, just thinking about this song, man, I'm like, this song is so gorgeous. Daniel Caesar gets on my damn nerve, but boy, can he make a good ass song. Like when Blessed played at the prom, and you got Keisha and Justin just slow dancing and swooning, and it was romantic but also bittersweet, because by then you know they're at a crossroads. It's like the song says, yes, I'm a mess, but I'm blessed to be stuck with you. And the softness of the music, and then Japanese Denim playing, which is my favorite Daniel Caesar song. It's just a chef's kiss. Like that R&B era, I feel it doesn't get enough credit. So to hear those songs played now, I really appreciated that nod to that time, to the 2015 through 2020 era of R&B and neo soul. That discovery of these artists, it was fantastic. The soundtrack doesn't just underline the romance, it also underscores themes. Like, for example, there was a scene with Justin and his dad where they were just in the garage chilling, and they had some early 90s jazz funk playing, and that was like a nod to Eric's era and the vibe that he had. And you can see his music taste and how it passed down to Justin to having his own style in his own right. What's amazing about that is nearly every song was era appropriate, like all from 2016 through 2018. So it wasn't like a song that came out in 2024 playing. No, it was themed and it was very appropriate. And then Brock Akil said in an interview that she even talked to her son about it, to say, hey, you're around that age, help me out here. Help me curate this playlist. This love playlist from a male perspective, from, let's say, a 17-year-old boy in 2017, 2018. What would he send to a girl? And I think that paid off. Like, you can see that detail, and it paid off in this story. The music wasn't just thrown in for cool points. It was intimately tied into each character and each storyline. And the show also uses an original score quietly in the background at times. But to be honest, the song choices still shine bright either way. Every episode had its own mini mixtape and its own mood to help guide your feelings. To sum it up about the soundtrack, man, it was all about storytelling. Music can tell stories. It talks about the characters, Justin and Keisha, mixing their mood swings through their song selections, and it set the scene. It makes us, the audience, feel everything on a more deeper scale. If you watch it, I highly recommend, if you can, when no one else is home, to blast the volume, a little bit higher for the full effect, and watch the screen in a very detailed way. Listen to the sounds. Close your eyes for a few seconds to feel their feelings and feel the song and that story in the music. And when you do that, you're going to open your eyes like, God damn, this is amazing. At least I did. That's what I got from it. And I appreciate them for that. I want to talk about the last episode, if y'all don't mind. If you haven't watched it yet, you can skip this part. I'll make sure I have the timestamp on it so you can skip past this part. But I want to talk about it in particular because I think it was well written and it was well delivered from the actors, Justin and Keisha. And man, it was heavy. So we get to the final episode, and as I mentioned earlier, it was a very clever mirror of how it all began. So it started at this fancy New Year's Eve party, just like how they first met, and there's a sense of coming full circle. Even though only now a year had passed, everything felt different. Justin and Keisha were at uncertain terms at this point. They've been through, in a year, they've been through so many breakups and so many back and forths and the makeups, and recently a pretty serious falling out. And then they arrive at this party separately, unsure of how to approach each other. And the way it was shot was just fantastic. With all the party stuff going on, you can still see them catch each other and that weight of what that felt like and what that looked like. And the color palette was very vivid. It was giving gold and black decoration. So very New Year's Eve, but at the same time, you could feel the characters and their emotions. And at the party, the moment of truth happens. They step outside, away from all the noise, and they finally have a raw, honest conversation. Justin admits that as much as he loves Keisha, he realized that he's not in the right headspace to be the partner that she deserves. Well, he's not with how lost he is right now with his own life direction. And then Keisha, being strong as ever, confesses her own fears about holding him back or losing herself if he continues to cling too tight. And while she loves him, she wants to become that woman who she is by herself even more so, and to let that woman grow without being Justin's girlfriend at the same time. So for them to mature so much in a year as two 18-year-olds talking was gorgeous to see, and it was beautifully shot and well done. They realized that maybe the best way to love each other is to let go and grow on your own. And that's a very, very bittersweet realization, because it's not that they don't love each other enough. It's that they love each other in a way that has to evolve. And the way to evolve might have to be separately. And that's okay. One thing I love is how when they reunited later on, Justin kind of makes a promise. He says, maybe we'll be ready for each other in 10 years. And talk about an important line because they kind of laugh at it. They chuckle at the thought of that throughout the tears and through that realization of maybe it won't happen too. It's like a half joke, but also hope at the same time. And it's the idea that this is first love and it's not some fleeting puppy love that I'll forget and never think about again. You're going to be on my mind until the end. And I'm okay with that. It's that kind of love that sticks with you no matter where you go, no matter where they go, through the good and the bad, the ups and the downs. That person will always be a thought somewhere inside your brain. And that was a nod to the Judy Blume original story, which ended with them acknowledging that they might not be forever now, but they'll always care for each other in the end, in the long run. It's not out of bitterness or out of spite, but it was empowering how they parted and they have a mutual respect for each other and understanding of what needs to happen as individuals. From a narrative standpoint, I think this perfectly tees up season 2. Like we said before, there will be a season 2 with Forever. And I think the finale too, because there were some hints of news about something going on overseas. So maybe we'll get some COVID in season 2. I don't know. But I can't wait to see how they explore the characters entering maybe the pandemic era or being in separate locations and how that works. If they do connect again, being apart, will it tear them apart? You know, I think that's kind of fun to think about and fun to make up that story, if you will. We might see Keisha and Justin navigating adulthood, possibly reconnecting over Zoom University, something like that. You know, the FaceTime phone calls and not actually being able to meet or drive to your house or to her house. I appreciate Forever and how they told this story in a black lens and showing young love and just a great era to be. It all felt earned and I appreciate it. In summary, I want to say that it's clear Forever struck a chord. From the social media responses range from hilarious to I want to run Christian that fade to being heartfelt. The threads and the tweets and the Facebook posts about it. It was just like one giant viewing party. And even though I watched it like 2 weeks after it came out, y'all were still there. Y'all were showing love to this cast and kept the conversations going because this felt like our story. And you know a show is good when it spawns the TikTok think pieces and the Reddit debates about whether Keisha and Justin should have stayed together or the moms and how this person ain't shit, that person ain't shit. That's when you know it holds weight and people love it. The fans on social media, you know, we all laughed and cried together, made memes and analyzed, like on this podcast, from top to bottom, this whole show. And it became more than just a binge watch show or a show to kill time in the background. It became a conversation. For some, a very needed and necessary conversation. And isn't that what a great cinematic story can do and is supposed to do? It gets us talking about our past, our futures, our culture, our feelings. And Forever, for me, did just that. And I hope it did for y'all too. So thank you all for listening to this season premiere of season 2 of the Cinematic Soul. And this series, at its core, is about love, first love, family love, self-love, and tough love. I feel like they gave us a gift. And I'm happy to share that gift with you guys and keep the conversation going about this fantastic show. No matter if you're a teenager sorting out your own heartbreak or an adult healing old wounds, I feel like with Forever, you'll find a way to resonate. And the show will resonate with you. Forever gave us laughter and a hell of a soundtrack, but it also gave us a mirror to see parts of ourselves and our families. And sometimes you have to reflect. Thank you all for listening. To all my new listeners, I appreciate you all. Welcome to the family. I hope y'all stay tuned. If you haven't, go back and check out season 1. All of those episodes and reviews, from the Love Jones to the Best Man to Set It Off. Go check those out. Let me know what y'all think. And stay tuned, because season 2, we're getting into some more black classics and the culture. So I can't wait to keep talking to y'all. And also on that subject, you can follow me on Instagram at Cinematic Soul Pod. Again, that's Cinematic Soul Pod. I'll be making my Threads account for the podcast soon, but for now, you can follow me on Threads at EBKnowing. Again, that's EBEKNOWING on Threads, and let's talk about it. Thank y'all for listening. Stay black, stay proud, and keep the soul in cinema alive. Peace and love.